We've got Rob from Llangattock Community Valleys, Community Woodlands. We've got Nicola from Knighton Community Woodlands, and we'll kick off in a minute with Liz from Lacey Goidwig. Each of them has got about 10 minutes to present. We'll let them present, then we'll ask questions at the end. If you've got questions to ask along the way, please make use of the chat. Patrick Adams, who's on screen here, and who'll wave his hand at you, there you go, is watching the chat, so will interrupt me if anything crucial arrives or put some links in the chat. But if you want to get my attention, if you can do the normal Zoom hand, otherwise questions in the chat. Before we kick off, these are brought to you partly, but in part by Pace, that's very important, and in part by Egin and the Egin program. So rather than me trying to explain Egin, I'm going to ask Angela, who's from DTA Wales, Development Trust Association Wales, to give just a 30-second pitch as to what Egin is and how Egin might help.
So Egin's a 7-year lottery funded programme. So it's to help community groups take their first steps in tackling climate change. So we offer free peer mentoring. We've got quite a large mentor pool from all around Wales to help groups develop skills and experience to move forward. And there's also an Egin grant, lottery funded through the Sustainable Steps programme, and that's £15,000. And I'm one of the facilitators that covers Powys and project support. I'll put the link in the chat. So yeah, if you're interested, get in touch.
Brilliant. Thanks, Angela. And I said the link will go in the chat. I need to make everybody aware that we're recording these. So we record these so that we can put them up as webinars on the Pace website, Facebook page. So other people have been going in and listening into previous ones. So I hope that's all okay with everybody. And what we'll do is we'll kick off this morning with Liz from Lacey Goidwig. So Liz, welcome. I think you're going to put a few slides up to share.
I am. I'm just going to find my.
And when they pop up, I'll start the clock running. And
okay. Can you see that, guys?
it is just about to appear. There we go.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's nice. It's not like this is not like Teams, so you're completely isolated from everyone. Okay, Borodar Pawb. My name is Liz, and I work with an organisation called Lacey Goidwig, which is translated as Voice of the Woodlands, and we work with community woodlands across Wales. We were set up by a group of community volunteers who had woodlands in different places across Wales, and they felt very isolated and didn't really, because it was something completely new 12, 13 years ago, they weren't really sure about how to get the support that they needed from authorities and from the public sector. So like very many community startups, they thought, right, well, we'll look to our community. So we are very much a grassroots orientated organisation. We were set up by members and we support our members. And these are just some of the photographs that we have. We have an amazing image library. So if you're into woodlands or anything outdoors, then we have hundreds and hundreds of photographs from people working in woodlands. Currently, we started out with 5 members back in 2008, and we now have 143 community woodland groups across Wales, which is fantastic and growing. I think with the climate emergency and also with the pressure on green spaces across Wales, community woodlands are forming quicker than ever. So what is a community woodland, you might ask? Well, a community woodland is a woodland that meets local needs. So here we have a recent workshop from Llangattock Community Woodlands, and Llangattock, I'm sure as you will hear from Rob, was set up with biodiversity in mind, but also has an amazing firewood business. And it's also we're also community woodlands that support wildlife as much as they support as much as they support people. So we might see that some of the reasons why community woodlands are set up is because of a threat to a green space, or a threat to a woodland from housing or from councils who want to build on the space, or chop the trees down because of land grab problems from developers. So a lot of the time, community woodlands get together to try and save that space. But in saving that space, they're also saving the wildlife and the biodiversity within that space. And this is a picture of birch tapping with Knighton Community Woodlands. And it's also a community woodland is also a wood that has local, so community woodlands have management control over their woodlands. So it's not like a wildlife site where, say, the Wildlife Trust or Powys County Council own the site and then they have a volunteer group that come in. We have more autonomy over those sites. So a woodland management plan is developed, and the woodland management plan is carried out and undertaken by the volunteers. The volunteers are responsible for funding, so they have to think about their public liability insurance, their training and skills, their risk assessment. So just like a business, a community woodland group is an organised entity that is responsible. And it's no small thing managing a community woodland, as you'll hear from Nicola and Rob. You know, that they are reliant upon volunteers, and in a landscape, if you pardon the pun, that is ever pressing for more volunteers. Community woodlands are at the coalface, shall we say. So here's some of the places that we've got community woodlands. In Powys, we have 16 community woodland groups across the region, and we've got a new community woodland group setting up in Builth-Wells. Angela, who is here from Eggin, she's a member of Gelli Deg Dyfi in Machynlleth, which is a community woodland group. And I noticed that Kate is here from Prestine, and they have an amazing community, well, maybe not community woodland landscape, but a woodland landscape of several groups across the county. And it's not all green and lovely, as I'm sure you're going to hear. Like many community groups, there are issues. One, if you want to set up a community woodland group in a community, then access to land is particularly difficult, as Angela will tell you from Gelli Deg Dyfi. We're still looking for a space for a community tree nursery. So there's difficulty accessing woodland. And that might be that there's issues with the council or the landowner, and community woodland groups have lease arrangements with Natural Resources Wales, which I'm sure at the moment you can appreciate isn't an easy discussion. There's also problems with landowners who are risk averse, who don't really understand what a community woodland group is, which is where we step in. Securing funding is always a constant battle. There's lack of volunteers. Sadly, there's also vandalism and arson. Antisocial behaviour. You know, woodlands are out of sight of most of a community, and that is really attractive for some younger members of our society. But working with them can also prove to be a community bonding opportunity. And let's not mention dog poo. You know, dog poo is a constant. It's a constant in every council meeting that I've been to. And it's also a constant in many community woodlands. So a little bit more about Llais Goedwig. So we were set up with two simple aims by those original founder groups, and that was to promote and represent community woodland groups in Wales, which we do through our let's not say political, through our advocacy with the Welsh Government and with Natural Resources Wales. So we work alongside Welsh Government to promote the needs and objectives of community woodlands across Wales, and we also provide support and assistance to local community woodland groups, and we operate a free membership service. And within our membership, we have networking. So we bring people together, like at the Royal Welsh, which Nicola and Barry and Rob both all benefited from. So we bring everyone together to share experiences and knowledge. We have a national gathering once a year. And this year it's down in Pensacola and Swansea. And through peer support and just a cost-effective way of sharing issues and making sure that we don't leave any group out. We also have resources, we have a website, and we have events that we hold each year in different areas. We always go to the Eisteddfod and the Royal Welsh to share our information. And we also have lots of online and Facebook resources. And we try and raise the profile of community woodlands within the wider woodland community, and also with wider groups like PACE, for example. And also we attend One Voice Wales. We work with the local government association, and we work with the Wellbeing for Future Generations Commissioner. And I think this is one of the most important things: dialogue, not just with policymakers, but dialogue across all formats. So talking to people, we found, is one of the best ways of getting the message out, but also to share information and share issues and problems. And if you need to contact us, those are our details. And I'm Liz from Llais-y-Goedwig. So diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks very much, Liz. That's very much appreciated. Good introduction and a quick run around. I'm going to then go to Nicola next, but before we bring Nicola in, any questions for Liz directly of Llais-y-Goedwig from the presentation? I can't see any hands. I have one. So if I, as the chair, steal that privilege, I wanted to pick up on your work. You've got a project around tree nurseries in Powys. Do you want to just say a little bit more about the tree nurseries and their role and?
Yes, so we have a project working with the Woodland Trust and funded by the People's Lottery, and it's 4 years old now. So it started off with just a every time we went to events, we were always we were talking to people about the trees. Everyone has trees in their gardens, and people are really keen to grow trees, and we wanted to reflect that in our projects because we're membership driven. So we talked to the Woodland Trust, who have an issue with tree supply. So every time they have a project in Wales, trying to get locally sourced trees from the two areas that Wales supply, which is 303 and 302 in the provenance of trees, there just weren't enough to supply. So we put the two ideas together, and we support the development of community tree nurseries across Wales. We have free training and free resources. Every month we visit a tree nursery, and we look at how to set a tree nursery up, what guidelines that we need to, if you're selling trees, people need to know what the format is. And then we take them through from seed collection to propagation to development of a tree nursery to sharing those trees within a community to actually selling trees and registering with the national plant health body. So it's incredibly popular. And in fact, the latest tree nursery that we've set up in Powys is it's just out Powys, Brecon. It's within the Brecon Beacons National Park, and it's in Talgarth. And we set up a tree nursery with working with Black Mountain College and the community there.
Absolutely, definitely within Powys, even if it's overlaid.
Okay,
overlaid
there we
with
go.
the park. Yeah,
So we put and Angela and I from Gethley Deglyvi, we've been looking for a space for our tree nursery in Machynlleth since lockdown, actually. So we're still looking for a space. But if anyone wants any information about how to set up a tree nursery or any training or any support, please get in touch with us.
Okay, no, that's really good. I have a slight follow-up question, if I may, Hog.
Yeah, of course.
Which is I think I was reading about the Woodland Trust's approach to climate change, and obviously beginning to pick tree and tree species from, I think the figure was 300 miles further south. But that sense of prepping for what climate change might bring us, how does that relate to your tree nursery work? Because obviously local provenance, we can all go big thumbs up, but local provenance might struggle in.
Well, it's quite there's a big debate going on in the tree world about tree resilience. So there's one of our members in the north, Tim Peters, who has done his PhD in tree resilience and looking at where where we need to be sourcing trees for the next 20 years, because let's face it, if we're planting trees now, we're planting tree seeds now, say it's their oak or sessile oak, in 20 years time, are they really going to be surviving in the the current predicted changing climate? So he actually predicts that we will need to be sourcing tree seed from France and from mid France by 2028, I think he says, to be planting out. Now the Woodland Trust debate that, and there is a big conversation going on within the Woodland Trust about what to do about that, whether we look at resilience of current trees, and if we plant them now, they're going to grow up in this environment and they're going to be resistant to climate change and drought, or do we actually start sourcing seed from further south in the UK, and indeed from France? And if we source them from France, then we also have the problems of tree plant health passports. So it's quite a hot topic at the moment, and there isn't really a definitive answer, because obviously we're working with projections. We're not working with what the weather's like in 20 years. We can only predict. We can't actually know. So I'm going to cop out of that, Adam, by saying I think you're going to have to watch this space. And there is, and with NRW, NRW have tree nurseries where they're experimenting with different tree types as native as possible, but looking at different, more resilient trees for the future. I hope that kind of answers the question.
I think that's a brilliant answer, Liz, because I think I was conscious when I asked it that I was opening up a lid on probably a can of worms.
It's a bit of a can of worms at the moment, but I think there's a lot of research at the moment, and perhaps it's just community trial and error. Let's plant some trees and see what happens. The same with ash dieback. Let's see if there are ash dieback resistant trees in the community. We have a lot more flexibility than some of the large nurseries who are bound by rules and regulations. So I would say that the answer is at the community.
And I just to wrap that bit, it's striking me that communities out collecting seeds and growing seeds are going to have more diversity in their tree nurseries, which is your point.
Community. I mean, there is a group up in North Wales, and this is something for our community groups who are present now. There is a community group up in North Wales, Coitiad Mynydd, with Jenny Wong, who is an amazing researcher and speaker, and some of you will probably have heard her at the conferences online. But she and her group actually support the entire group by collecting tree seed and selling it to 4-star and Myla nurseries, and they make about £5,000 a year from doing that. So the community, communities at the ground level are actually supporting the development of our future forests.
Okay, brilliant. On that communities at ground level, let's go down to the ground level and go from the unanswerable, ponderous stuff around climate change down to Knighton. So Nicola, I'm going to bring you in, and I think Diana is sharing the slides, and you're saying next slide when you.
Yes, I will.
Want us to go. So over to you, Nicola, to introduce
the first
yourself.
slide, Diana, which is our logo. Thanks. We've now also got a leaflet just recently been published, so that's great news. I'm Nicola. I'm one of the trustees for My Sins. We had a big resignation last year of our management committee, so suddenly I found myself along with 2 others as part of the management committee within the group. So yes, next, Diana. I want to say a little bit about what we've done in the past, what we're going to do in the future, what we're doing now, and just make some concluding comments. And some of what I've got to say is it repeats a little bit about what Liz says. But yeah, let's see the next slide, Diane. That's it. Great. So we started in about 2010 as a not-for-profit company. I wasn't around at the time. And the idea was, which is an interesting idea, I don't know whether anyone in Powys does this, the idea was to have a woodland that we'd buy and manage it as allotments. Now, in fact, that didn't happen. And as I understand, it was partly because the price of land was going up dramatically. There are woods around here, community woodlands around this area where woods are owned. We do not own woods. We've worked in several woods and have had to build relationships with owners, and that might be, well, something people want to talk about later. The other thing to say about it is that it was definitely a group of people who all knew each other, and we're not in that ballpark now. So there are specific issues around taking on volunteers who we don't know. So managing volunteers is a bit of an issue, I think. Next, Diana. We have done quite a lot of different things in our time. I've been with the group since about 2013, I think. We've made a variety of things, produce from the woods that we work in, and you can see that list there. Stakes and pea sticks, we're not making any more. We have planted and used woods from the trees from the Woodland Trust. At the moment, the wood we're working in, we haven't done any planting, but that is something that we're very interested in doing as we help to move woods that we've worked into a more diverse broad-leaved wood. We've also spent quite a bit of time building things in woods that we've worked in, partly because they're often steep in Powys, so steps. A log shed, I don't think we'd do that again. That was took us a lot of time. You'll see later on one of my slides that we now use garden sheds, which we've renovated. And we've also built composting loo. But, you know, we're in a wood where there is already a drop toilet, so we don't have to do that now. And we've run courses, and we'd still like to do that. We've run courses on things like tree identification, ancient woodland, and such like. So the next slide, Diana, please, is just a picture of the woodshed that we grew. That's because I'm talking about woods built. And this presentation's got just a couple of pictures in it, just to give you an idea of what we've been up to. I'd like to turn to what we do now in the wood that we're working in. So the next slide, Diana. We've been working in this particular wood for, I think it's about 6 years. It's a coppice wood, and we coppice for fuel. And interestingly, it's the idea of getting some fuel that brings quite a lot of volunteers to us. And they're not necessarily interested in issues to do with climate emergency or biodiversity or any of those other issues. So, as I suggested before, volunteer management and volunteer kind of bringing on education. I don't mean that in a patronizing way, but I think that's quite something that groups have to consider. We got a grant, so we make charcoal, and we have moved from stakes and pea sticks to kindling. We have to make some money. As Liz comments, income is always a problem, and that's partly because of insurance, maintenance. You know, there's stuff we have to buy and things we have to pay for. And yes, we haven't built our own log sheds and place for our goods. We have an old garden shed now. Interestingly, we've much more developed towards the biodiversity end, and we got some money to set up with some training from Powys County Council recorders, a plant group, a bird group, and a moth group, and they survey the wood in regular intervals and supply information to the Powys recorders. And we're kind of interested in the long term about what our work dealing with felling and coppicing and all of that, what impact that has on biodiversity within the woods. So next slide, Diane. There's another picture. This is us making our fuel. So next slide. What I'd like to talk about is about climate emergency. I know that this is what the conference was originally intended to be about. So it's interesting within the group. It's not been a particularly over-conscious conversation, but over the years, what has emerged a variety of things which I think wood groups can do. I think one of the things that we offer is that we have very low travel costs to sale. So kindling and charcoal That's one of the things that, you know, we're not importing charcoal from Africa or wherever and throwing chemicals at it in and out of which is what happens with commercial charcoal. So our products are produced sustainably, not commercially. So I think that's another USB that we can say we're small scale, and I think that that's very attractive to people. And indeed, I now use some charcoal in the summer, which I had given up using for years and years and years because of the international charcoal trade. We are giving something back. So we do other things apart from thinking about making our fuel for our fires. We help our owner of the wood by doing things which she wants to do to increase biodiversity. So we've done ring barking, we've scalloped her main ride, we've added in a new ride for her. Obviously, we've been coppicing. These are all things which assist biodiversity. And I have to say, personally, if I think of my personal journey over the last 10 years, I came from a city. I didn't know much about woods. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get some, quotes, free wood. And over 10 years, I've learned a lot about how managing woods properly can make a difference to biodiversity and have a knock-on effect to issues to do with climate, etc., environment, etc., etc. I have recently learned about charcoal because I thought, oh, you know, we're burning the, you know, I'll show you a picture in a minute. Particulates from a small retort in the middle of a wood. What happens is you are producing particulates, but as I understand it, they go up into the air, but they come down into the wood. You're not doing it at a commercial scale. And that actually those particulates, don't ask me the physics of it, apparently are a benefit to the wood. So quite an interesting little snippet. We've moved towards not using plastic tarpaulins as we've learned more about particulates, so plastic particulates. And we're now using what I would call friendly chainsaw oil fuel, which apparently is better for your machines, better for the people, and also better for the environment. So it's a triple whammy, really. And clearly we car share where possible. That stopped during the COVID pandemic, but we're getting back to that now. So next slide, Diana. Yeah, just so you can see it. That one on the left with the burning is an astonishing thing to see. And I'll tell you a little bit about charcoal making if you wish. Next slide, Diana. As Liz suggests, and this is a constant problem of finding people who will do all of this stuff, because you've got to stay safe. So you've got risk assessments, you've got chainsaw training and certification, you've got first aid training, you've got to find an insurer. We use Zurich. They've got that. They seem to be best, although they've gone up in price a lot this year. Induction, you're working with new people who have a huge variety of backgrounds and skills. We do not own our wood. We don't take sole responsibility for the management. We devise a management plan in conjunction with the owner, and I think that that's really important. Obviously, we have to devise policies, constitution, bank account, and I would just love to have someone who knew about publicity and social media. We struggle. So that is an issue about the other things, that it's not just about the wood. So next slide, Diane. Yeah, another picture of us, because this is a great part. Of course, you must remember that it's about community and social connection, and being out, your mental health is improved by being out in the woodland, and that I think is something that you can sell when you're trying to attract new people. Next slide. And here we are. We've got what I think I've already alluded to, issues around volunteers. Maintaining an income is a problem, but we're sort of the kindling and charcoal. We're hanging on in there. Staffing the backroom jobs. And critically for us now, we are in a desperate search for finding another wood, because we've come to the end of we're just about going to finish the coppicing in a coppice wood this autumn. We've got very little left to do. And the owner, I think, is quite happy for us to move on. We did look at her red oak, but it's in a much too difficult place to help her manage that. And then we do talk about how to contribute to a woodland management plan in response to climate change. And although we've done no planting in the last couple of years, we've been in conversation with the owner about what trees that she should be planting going forward. We are looking for another wood. So if anyone has got any information about that, then I would be extremely pleased. And final slide is the next one. Volunteer engagement has been critical. We have been successful in grant applications. Our latest one has given us a couple of £100 to help with tarpaulins, which aren't plastic. So, but we've had training support, equipment support. The retort was got with a grant. So, you know, that's another backroom job, applying for grants. And Liz, advice and support from Lacey Goldwig. I absolutely support what you said, that I think they have been absolutely fantastic, both financially and in advice and support. Good communication. It's hard work, but good fun. And clearly, overall, it benefits our environment in this Wales, where I understand the percentage of unmanaged woodland is actually quite high. So I really hope that we can find another wood. Okay, so that's it. I hope I haven't watched my time, so I hope it's only 10 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll take that 30 seconds. It was brilliant, Nicola. Thank you very much. No, thanks very much indeed. And we'll bring Robin shortly. I'm probably not going to open up. There's a question in the chat or a commentary about biochar. I feel biochar is possibly a workshop on its own. So I might leave. You can see the chat in a minute, Nicola, and
okay.
Respond. I was going to reflect just before I bring Rob in, because we're asking other questions, unless there are any questions from the floor. I was going to reflect that because I was going to make the point that you don't own the woodland, and most people who don't own the woodlands, the key issue for the community seems to be about agency, a sense of engagement, and it feels like you have that with the owner.
Oh, truthfully so. And I mean, in the 10 years that we've 3 main woods we've worked in, and in each case the relationship has been good. The one difficulty we had with one wood is that it was owned by an organization that ran retreats, and that did become problematic because they'd say, sorry, you can't work this weekend, we've got a retreat. You know, so chainsaws and retreats don't exactly mix. But the relationship was good, but it is key, absolutely key, because you have to be. It needs to be a synergy. That's the word, isn't it? You need a synergy between the owner and yourself. I always say to the group, I say, look, we also need a symbiotic relationship. So even if you can't think that, you know, I don't really want to chainsaw a scallop or do stuff to create a wider ride, actually that's important to do, because A, it helps the environment, but B, it means we're going to be allowed to stay there to do her coppicing and take some wood out. So you know, you have to have a symbiotic relationship, really. And
you had that as one of your lines, wasn't it, which is landowner relationship, which if you don't own your woodland is a key skill set to hold. I'm going to bring Kate. Kate, you had a question for Nicola.
It was just,
Kate.
What do you call friendly chainsaw fuel?
Oh, don't ask me. I knew someone would ask me that. It begins with A, and I can't remember what it's called. I don't do chainsawing. So there are a few chaps and chapesses. And I go, I have nothing to do with chainsaws.
Okay.
If anybody on the call knows, there's there they go, Aspen. It's just gone in the chat, and somebody will go and find your web link. I assume that's Aspen a fuel as opposed to Aspen the tree. But
yeah.
I'll let that flow in the chat. Can I bring? Thank you very much, Nicola. Really nice. I used to live in Knighton, so yeah, I have a great sort of empathy. Beautiful place. And if I could think of a woodland, I would. Um, can I bring Robin from down at Clangattock, where I've never lived? So, Rob, are you there? I can see you, Rob, but I can see your name, but I can't see your. Let's see if I can get Rob to unmute. Calling Rob. There was me. We think he'd be sitting quietly in the background, waiting for his slot. Well, maybe we will have the discussion on biochar then.
Okay, so
Yeah, we can't find
I will just it's quite an interesting thing about biochar. It's been, I can only talk personally, but it's been part of my personal learning, and we do create what I call waste from our retort if the burn doesn't go particularly well. And slowly we've had this conversation. Isn't that biochar? What do we do? Is that what dirt? And we've got bags of this stuff. And what we eventually did is we had someone come along, not to give us a training, but he was interested in the wood. He's new to the area, and he talked a little bit about how to make it. And it's a man who works with an organization in Bishop's Castle in England. We've decided for the time being that we're not going to pursue it. And there are a variety of reasons for that. First of all, we're not noticing a local market, although one of our members is just about to approach horticultural societies around here to see if we could find a local market. And then we might consider making it more, but I'm particularly concerned about the split that occurs in our fairly small group, which takes us right back to where do you get your volunteers from? What do they want to do? That sort of thing. If I've got a key chainsawyer having to load and deal with charcoal when actually I'm desperate for the group to finish their felling before the beginning of the spring. So it's partly workload management. We add a third thing to do. I'm not sure. So there's an issue to do with markets, an issue to do with size of the group, and there's also an issue because we don't know what we're doing about biochar. So we're making tentative explorations, and who knows, that might happen in a new wood. Obviously, we're not going to try and do it in our current wood because we're coming to the end of the current wood. When I say I don't think there's the market around here, I think it's still not widely known about. So I'd be interested in other people's views.
Well, and maybe if I split the conversation, I'm going to have to confess that I've been trying to call Robin to make his presentation, and Rob has kindly said he's not the right Rob. Sorry, Rob. So I think we're missing Rob from Clangattock. So I'm going to suggest we do a couple of conversations. I'm going to say something a little bit about biochar and charcoal, but maybe Liz and Glacier Good might want to pick up this issue around volunteer management and this balance that you just touched on, Nicola, between need to get work done and actually why volunteers turn up. And maybe we'll come back.
That's it. Yeah.
But that's just a little bit of a
And
heads up.
I can tell you one of the things that I absolutely know about running a charcoal retort. I thought it was so exciting getting to use it. But I try and avoid not getting. In my
dim and distant past, I used to run an outfit called Clun Valley Alder Charcoal Company. So over the valley from you in Knighton.
Yeah.
And that was driven by the need to recoppice the riverside alders, which were always used to be coppiced, a big industry, coppiced for clogs and clog production. So the reason why there are so many alders in the Shropshire Hills was because it was a big industry.
Oh, interesting.
And obviously we don't wear clogs anymore. So you have to bring back in another rationale for why you need to be back on the riverbanks managing the woodland. So that community woodland was just terribly linear. I think what struck me from your slide though, Nicola, is, and which I thought was really pertinent, you said that you started using charcoal again because you've got a local supply as opposed to having to buy from unsustainable mangrove sources, etc.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, for me, I think biochar is a really important thing, but the thing that is but it's sort of an overcomplication and almost an unnecessary extension from simply good charcoal production.
Well, that's the feeling of the group at the moment.
Yeah. And we used to use all our and you should absolutely put all your charcoal dust into your tree nursery, or we used to use it for drying the rides out. So we used to basically use it alongside wood chip for drying out the really, really boggy rides in our woodlands.
Right.
So we were really quite crude about what we used it for. And my sense would be if you had the ability to displace imported charcoal production with local charcoal, that's a much more public facing and human orientated and tangible use of.
Okay, so those of you, I haven't looked at who's in the webinar, but Bunners in Montgomery is selling it, and it's also available in Knighton, and we're hoping to get it into Bishop's Castle as well.
If you want an outlet in Newtown, I can find you an outlet in Newtown.
We sell kindling in Newtown, but yes, okay, I'll take you up later, Adam.
So anybody else want to jump in on for 2 or 3 minutes on the biochar charcoal?
From a national perspective for Llys-y-Goedwig, biochar it's been one of those things that's gently burning in the background, if you pardon the other pun this morning.
Very good, Liz.
It's we've got several groups who have charcoal retorts, and actually it's a shame that Llangatto can't hear actually, because they produce charcoal as well, and they've been looking at biochar production with one of our community development officers, Steve, who fashioned over lockdown a homemade retort that's now on wheels that he takes around to different groups to show how to make biochar out of the wood brash that they have from clearance. So I don't know much about it. There is a fantastic new lecturer at Black Mountain College, Rachel Hasler, who came from Machynlleth, and she and her business partner Steenie produced biochar in Machynlleth and sold it, and I think it was called Green Gold. Angela might be able to help me there, but they produced biochar in Machynlleth, and biochar is fantastic as a soil improver. So we're looking at a national project now where we have demonstration sites for biochar production, and then that is then used for soil improving on the community nurseries. So we're trying to develop that market, Nicola, that you desire, because you need a
I'm sure it'll come. I mean, I'm not much of a gardener, and I went biochar. What's that?
Really good for your gardens as well.
I consider myself reasonably informed, so
it's quite. I mean, it's quite a new. It's not new, but it is new. There is also an associate that we work with, Steve Wilson, who does lots of training with the community tree nurseries, who's passionate about biochar for trees and how it improves the mycorrhizal connections in tree nurseries. So if you want any information, I'll happily send information over to you. There's an international biochar community who post amazing things that you can make amazing things out of biochar that I had absolutely no idea about. Face masks, that's one of the things I took away. Everyone's talking about machinery and these amazing things you can do with the land, and I took away the fact you can have them as food supplements and face masks. Yes, so if you want any information or any connections, that would be brilliant. And Adam, I would love to talk to you or further conversation about the Alderwood, because we are looking at a national heritage lottery project about traditional crafts and woodlands and how the woodlands were used in the past, working with Trevor, the last clog maker in Wales. So that would be a fantastic opportunity, Adam.
Yeah, no,
I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you very much.
Pick that one up. And likewise, I mean, biochar, because it's got this fantastic, I mean, charcoal full stop. Let's just call it charcoal. This fantastic surface area, massively porous, holds. It's why it's used in masks, because it's got such a big surface area. It's why it's used in water purification. It's why it's really good for putting in the rice to soak up the water.
Okay. Find us a new wood and I'll reconsider. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough. Shall I just pull you forward a little bit on the issue around volunteers then, Nicola? You might want to just sort of touch on it, because I think this is quite an interesting area where. So we talked about how owning a woodland or leasing a woodland, and that sense of management control is really important, and you balanced it with, if you don't own the woodland, it's that relationship with the owner, and this issue of relationships is really important in the community woodland sector. And will you tease out a little bit more about your balances?
Just to go back to the owner, I mean, in the current wood, I mean, with Lycée Godwig's support, we've had staff from Lycée Godwig on Castle Ring where we work, and I have gone round the wood with the owner talking about what's on site and what we want to do with it. So that is almost as though we both live in the same house, and that to me is a fantastic way of going forward and building a management plan. But go back to volunteers. I mean, this group did start out of an organization where they were all working together already. And the project they'd done is that they had helped to establish the allotments in a community allotment in Knighton before my day. And then obviously out of that, they thought, well, we'll have an allotment of trees. We can all have a bit of trees and we'll have an allotment. But 10 years on, I mean, we're putting out leaflets and a Facebook page. And just yesterday, well, whichever day it was, last week, I took 2 new people up to the wood. One was extremely experienced, one was not experienced at all. So they absolutely both need an entirely different approach. Even induction is problematic because we've got an induction checklist like you would do if you were in a big organization. And it's sort of sensitive. You don't want to say to the person who's hugely experienced, do you know how to use a bill hook? So right from day one, how much time do you spend with them? How much do you don't? Personality wise, are they going to fit in? You're not interviewing people. And I can think of being in my paid employment in the past, and that it resonates absolutely, because you're not interviewing people. And of course, interviewing is a flawed process, as we all well know, if you work in organizations. But just think of those issues that if you work in a team and suddenly you're just welcoming people, you've got to exaggerate entirely. You might have someone who knows an enormous amount about woods who's a racist, I mean, that hasn't happened.
How's your experience?
If you think about that and the potential implications, and then, as I've also suggested, people come for certain reasons. So all the backroom jobs, really hard to find someone, really hard. I mean, I do a lot of that myself and have to work very hard at getting people to that. Because they come because they want free wood. Now, again, I exaggerate. But so it's complex. People are complex, so it's complex.
In a minute, I'm going to come to the firewood question as well. But I was reflecting that in my experiences, inexperienced volunteers actually are quite straightforward because they're inexperienced and there's a process for bringing them in. Some of my biggest difficulties in volunteers have been the ones who are really experienced, because they come with an assumption that they know. I mean, they do know an awful lot, and managing them into a volunteer context, I've always found
and I actually, what's interesting,
really valuable people. But
so when the management committee decided to resign, we all looked at each other and went, "Oh no!" And myself and 2 others are now on the management committee, but actually, all 3 of us are not very informed about woods. So that's interesting in itself, because I rely on the volunteers who've got experience. When someone says, "Are we going to chop down that tree?" or whatever the question is, so that's that. I have to run the organization, or the three of us run the organization in deliberately in an extremely cooperative, extremely democratic way, very flat. I mean, we reserve the right to make decisions, of course we do, but I've got a few people, we've got a few people who would say they're very informed. I make sure I consult.
I would say,
And in that way, you bring people in, and it's all those things about team building, you know. So we have had socials so that, you know, you can get to know people, not just in the wood. Haven't had one in the last 18 months, but you know, so I'm trying to do, or we're trying to do, some of those things which are about team building.
I assume by the very definition that we're talking about community woodlands, we have this wonderful interplay between the technical woodland knowledge and this is actually all about human beings and the social connection.
Yeah.
And on that point, I'm going to bring Kate in, because you put your hand up very politely.
As well as being part of the newly established woodland reserve we have in Prestine, I'm one of 23 shareholders of a woodland between Prestine and Knighton. And the thing that we've found that we go back to when things get contentious is that we had a management plan drawn up right at the beginning. Woodland Trust did it for us. And we can, and we try really hard to go for consensus. But we do have fallings out, and we do have different opinions. But if you've got this really good, simple management plan that Woodland Trust did for us, because we have a few ancient woodland indicators and trees on the place, so they had a grant for doing that at the time, and we can go back to that and say, look, this is on the plan, this isn't. This is what we were advised. This is what we weren't advised to do.
A very, very important point.
Yeah, that is a very important point, Kate. And I don't think I recognise you, so hope to meet you someday.
I think you should. You could have 6 miles away. Go and
exactly.
Go and meet in the woodland. Go and meet in the woodland halfway between Knighton and Prestine.
Yes.
Yeah. Which wood is that, Kate? I'm curious.
It's Bath Dingle. It's up. If you go on the main road from between Knighton and Prestine, it sort of drops. It's a dingle. It drops right down off the main road.
Yeah,
if you go on the bus, you can see right down into the woodland.
Brilliant.
It's 25 acres, something like that.
How many acres, Kate?
About 25, but 23 owners. So it's a bit like herding cats.
And there are two or three woods. A friend of mine is a joint owner of a woodland. It's actually just in Gwynedd. It's that bit. He's just over the border from on the Dovey Valley, so he's just on the other side. So and I think they're about 25 people as well. You know, that's so I think it's a very interesting model. Can I, for the last couple of minutes, maybe just talk about firewood, because we're missing Rob from Agatha, who would have talked about it. I do think it's a really interesting driving force about the issue of good quality firewood. I'm not saying at reasonable, at fair prices. Yeah. And I do think that's a really big driver for people engaging in woodlands, particularly here in Mid Wales. But it brings with it, perhaps, Nicola, that what you've touched on, it brings in a certain motivation that.
Oh yes, I mean, it was my original motivation. You know, sort of. Oh, I'm living in a rural area. What do I do? Oh, look. You know, so that's where I started. So I empathise with that incentive. The way we run is that we tell the group how many hours we've worked, including travel time, and at the end of the year, the fuel that we have produced is allocated according to there are several variables, obviously, the amount of wood we've produced, the amount of people who've worked there, and how many hours they've done, and you get free wood. So your allocation is directly linked to how much energy you put in. We used to give sorry, I said that incorrectly. The owner gets a what's the word when you slice an amount of
A tithe.
A tithe, thank you. And for personal reasons, she's now not giving the tithe back to us. So we no longer have a tithe, which we used to sell. the tithe goes off to the owner.
Okay.
So we're not really making any money out of the fuel at all, because it all gets allocated. We used to sell the tithe at a low price to members, but we
Okay.
don't have the tithe to sell anymore. So it doesn't make us any money at all. It's an incentive for the volunteers to come.
Yeah. Okay. No, I don't think, again, just touching 10 o'clock now, so I'm going to sort of draw it to a close and see if there are any other questions. But I do think there's a really interesting exchange of knowledge around how firewood, you know, one of my experiences, there are lots of people who aren't physically able to manage woodlands who rely on firewood to keep warm. And I'm sort of interested somewhere in a conversation around how do community woods link to the people who aren't that physically able. Maybe they're the ones who do your accounting and your.
Well, I think a bigger conversation. Yeah. If I lived in a city, I would not be using a wood fire. No. Why is it that we're using wood fires in this area still? Yes. And I think the argument we've talked about it, and I think the argument we give is about local sustainability, lack of travel, etc. But you've got to be alert to that. We're learning more about what wood chucks up.
But I've just been to visit somebody, and their complaint is their neighbour's got a wood burner. This is in the urban part of Newtown, by the way. Yeah, and actually the critical issue is she's not managing that wood burner very well, and the wood that's going into it is really poor quality wood. So the problem comes from not from the wood burner; it comes from not doing it. And I think there's a wider conversation. Anyway, we're well off the. Liz, would you like to say a last couple of words from Claycy Goodwin?
Yes, wood should be dry.
Oh, wow. So listening to Nicola, we did a project for 2 years working with Powys community woodland groups, and the original feedback from the first survey was that people didn't have that the volunteers didn't think they had lots of knowledge about woodlands. And clearly, listening to Nicola, she has tons of knowledge about woodlands. She knows the woodlands intimately. She's got she's juggling about 15,000 jobs. And that's what we found with the volunteers, is that they work incredibly hard to maintain the spaces, but also to maintain the community aspect of the community woodlands. And it's the same for Angela, and it's the same for Kate. We're all working within these communities that are directly benefiting the environment and climate change mitigation, but at the same time juggling all these things that everybody would juggle anyway in society. So I think we just need to recognise how incredibly important people working away in community woodlands are. You know, whether they're working there for firewood or whether they're working there to get peace of mind and to enjoy the space. I think they're the unsung heroes, and hopefully today, thank you very much for hearing our story. And if you are interested, or you have an idea of a woodland for Nicola, or you want to know more about Kate or Angela's expertise in Machynlleth, then please get in touch with us and I'll forward on the details. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. It falls to me to say, first of all, thank you, Liz, for the presentation. Thank you for contributing thoughts and ideas. Big thank you, Nicola. That's been great. Nicola, when it was online with us at about 8:30, trying to work out how to make all the slides work. Yeah. So thank you to Nicola and for Diana for pressing it through. That was brilliant to hear that experience. I'm very sorry we couldn't find you, Rob from Langattock, and apologies, Rob, whoever you are on the screen, that I tried to force you into a presentation that you were completely unprepared to make. This has been the 10th of 10, and this is about community woodlands. So if you've been in on previous ones, many of you I can see are regular names. So some of you will have been to a lot, some of you come because it's woodland, but we've done repair cafes, we've done community energy, we've done community transport, etc. And that's sort of been brought to you by PACE, by Powys Action on the Climate Emergency. So whilst this sort of brings to the close this series of 10, and there isn't currently a plan to do more, I think there's an ambition to do more, and there's certainly an ambition to get our conference back in place sometime later in 2025, having missed the opportunity to bring everybody together. And what I note when listening on these, we end up with these, in all of these conversations, we end up with two conversations. We end up one which is technical. We've had the one about biochar today and masks, and we've had the ones around firewood. And the common one that bonds it all together is community. Yeah. And it's always interesting to see that cross-feeding between one community and another, irrespective of the technical topic they're involved in. They face many of the same issues, offer many of the same talents. Liz, I think you're spot on there. Let's celebrate how good we are at communities at managing our businesses and our interrelationships. Yeah. Without a HR department, we do HR. Without a finance department, we do finance. Yeah. You know, without a land agency department, we do land management. You know, we do all of those things. And I think there's a big celebration to be had about the power of community. So I just want to say thank you all very much indeed. The video goes online. And if you want to keep in touch with what Pace is up to, drop your email in the chat, pick up on Diana's email that's in there and forward it to Diana. And I'm sure we will be back in touch. And probably a reminder that there's a really good Powys Green Guide out there that links you to good green activities. And we're going to try and do a little bit more on pulling that together and promoting that a bit more. So Diana, have I missed anything technical? Diana's been on all of these. Should I have said, is there something I should have said that I haven't said?
No, I was just trying to get the link for Powys Green Guide, but if you type it in, you'll find it. And if you scroll to the very bottom of the first page of the Powys Green Guide, the home screen, there's a link to the Powys Green Guide YouTube channel, which is where you'll find all the videos. The last couple might not be up yet, so I have to have a little bit of editing first. I know the button's not in the right place, and we do want to make it much easier to find, but it's a work in progress. But yeah, great. Let's see what comes after this,
Okay.
and what we take forward.
A personal thank you very much. Diana has been stalwart behind the scenes on all of this, along with Lisa, who you haven't seen today. So thank you and Jeremy. So thank you to the team at Pace. And
Okay, so
I hope you all have a very good Saturday. Yeah.
I dropped out. I tried to find the chat button and I missed the end of what Liz said. I've just got back in, so so I missed the last 5 minutes. So
you missed the bit where we said thank you very much, Nicola. You were brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you very much to everybody.
Anyway,
Nicola, if you want to stay on,
thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Take
thank
care,
you.
folks.
Yeah. Bye bye. Thank you.
And we'll end the recording.